Hello everyone, and welcome back to this video podcast. I'm Joshua Searle, and I'm pleased to be joined today by my colleague Zoltan Schwab, and we are discussing the status of theology in the academy. And we've already covered the issue of the Enlightenment and the process through which theology was relegated from being the queen of the sciences to becoming the court jester. We've spoken a little bit about the development of liberal theology and Schleiermacher and the turn towards subjectivity. And in this part of the discussion, I want to bring us to the present day and to think about the role of theology in a so-called post-truth age, a post-truth academy, and to understand the marginalization of theology in relation to the contemporary world. And I think we could say, Zoltan, you might agree with me that we're living in a day, in an age where truth is in some peril, truth is in danger, we're in some trouble today because we live in a cultural environment of triviality, of mass media, of celebrity culture and sensationalism. And these cultural trends are not conducible to the kind of deep theological reflection that we want to encourage and that we want to engage with. As theologians, as the church, as God's people. And it seems that in today's world, truth is routinely confused with the shallow falsehoods of socially constructed illusions that somehow govern the collective consciousness. We sometimes call this public opinion or the will of the people, whatever label we choose to attach to these trends. But there seems to be a general disregard for truth in contemporary society in this so-called post-truth age. And I think this is relevant to our discussion about the status of theology in the academy today, because the university academy is not some kind of ivory tower removed from the rest of life. The university academy is part of this wider society, and it's being swept up by these more general social trends. And I think, how does this express itself in, how do these trends express themselves in academic life today and in theological academies? Well, I don't know about you, Zoltan, with your experience of being a specialist in biblical studies and having trained and taught at some of the elite universities like Durham. But my impression of theology today is that there seems to be a universal distrust of theology, not just of theology as a legitimate academic pursuit, but theology seems to have lost its authority within the academy, within the institutions of knowledge, of higher education. And even the question today about what counts as legitimate knowledge is, there's some doubt about whether theology even comes under this description as a legitimate academic discipline that produces relevant or legitimate knowledge at all. And I think this is, we're confronted with a real crisis. We spoke about the crisis that Schleiermacher and his contemporaries confronted 200 years ago, but I think 200 years on, we're faced with a similar turning point. We're at a fork in the road in theology, and we need to think about how we can respond to some of these challenges, the challenges of secularism, of postmodernism, of living in a post-truth world, and really coming to terms with, what is theological knowledge, and is there a difference between knowledge on the one hand, true knowledge, and theological knowledge on the other hand. So it's a more epistemological question. So I wondered, Zoltan, if you had any thoughts on these trends, especially as they're affecting biblical studies and theology more generally.
Yes. Well, you've mentioned a number of different issues. So let me try to figure out in what order I should respond to them. Well, first of all, speaking about the post-truth society and postmodern society, I think I'm a bit more optimistic than you are, because I do see a lot of overlaps between what Christianity teaches and what postmodernism teaches. I see even overlaps between what Christianity teaches and a post-truth society, because I think we often make the mistake that we think that the Christian truth is a doctrinal statement, a propositional statement, and that is what we have to defend. Mm-hmm. It's not like that. The truth, according to Christian teaching, is Jesus. The truth is a person. And if you think about it, this is not that different from what Donald Trump is proclaiming. As I understand his views, well, I'm not sure how much of views he has, but the views of his followers, they consider him as the cornerstone of what truth is. And when we speak about a post-truth society, what we mean is that certain people don't bother about what other people or different disciplines teach. They are only concerned about what Donald Trump says, and that's what they consider truth. We Christians are somewhat similar. Hopefully not exactly, but somewhat. We consider a person to be the truth. So it's, if you like, it's a competition between persons. So I'm not that anxious about postmodern approaches which say that there are no objective, provable truth which are applicable in every situation and all that. My answer to this is, it's a very pragmatic answer, that okay, fine, let's leave behind these overarching statements, but let me tell you a few things about my relationship with Jesus and how I know Jesus. So this postmodern context is not such a huge problem for me, because I can speak about my local truth, who is a person, and that is Jesus. So that's one thing. The other thing, I completely agree. Theology as such has lost its reputation and place, and we can see several examples for this. I've just heard about this from a very reputable university, that the university government invited someone from the theology department to take part in the big university administration, because they felt that, well, this is one of our departments. After 150 years, after all, we should invite someone from that department to take part in the university leadership. And as they admitted afterwards, they were genuinely surprised, even shocked by the fact that that person wasn't a complete moron, but that was actually an intelligent person who could think things through logically and who could contribute. So that they had this prejudice shows that you are right. Theology lost its reputation, and other people think that it's some kind of madness. And but this is this again gives me reason for optimism, because it seems that we are actually much better than what the prejudice of other academics tells them about us. So we can surprise them with our intellectual depth. And finally, I think that there is a very good argument for the place of theology in academia. And with this, I'm going back to our first session, where we spoke about second order and first order questions, that contemporary theology sadly tends to ask only second order questions. What is the history of faith, instead of what is faith? And and the argument which we can make, and I think this is a very powerful argument, university, the idea of university and the idea of academy, is that we can ask any questions, and there should be a place for all the questions, and we should bring these questions and the different sorts of answers into discussions with each other. If theology is excluded from academia, then certain first order questions are excluded from academia. Then certain questions are simply not asked.
They're not even asked, yes.
Not even asked in academia. And I think this is a powerful argument for having theology in the academia, because in order to be able to ask questions, not mathematical questions, but questions about why mathematics matters, and we need theology.
Yes, yeah, we do. I agree absolutely, Zoltan. I think it's a very pertinent comment. I suppose the question for me, though, is not just about asking philosophical or theological questions, drawing on a theological vocabulary to ask those questions. But I think, for me, the issue is about the answers that theology aspires to. So it's one thing to ask a question. It's another thing to give an answer, an authoritative answer to those questions. Because I think that in a postmodern, relativistic, academic culture, people will be fine with even theologians asking even stupid questions. That's okay. But I think we get in trouble once we start to offer answers, and we start to be a little bit more definitive or committed in the way that we respond to those questions. I think this issue supervenes on the question of the status of theology in the contemporary academy. So, for example, theology faculties today, I would argue, are not really regarded as repositories of legitimate knowledge by the wider academic community. So we can ask lots of questions, but what actual knowledge do we produce as theologians? We don't produce mathematical knowledge where we can establish the truth of the simple sum 2 + 2 = 4. Theology asks a different kind of question, and the more profound the question, the more difficult it is to arrive at a definitive answer. But I suspect that this postmodern condition, post-truth, however we want to, relativistic, however we want to define it, I think this explains why universities today, and theology faculties are no exception to this, universities today are obsessed not so much with knowledge, but with research. So research has supplanted knowledge as the currency of the contemporary university. Now, I have to say that as a Christian, I'm far more interested in knowledge than I am in research. And yet I'm required by the university faculties and by the research excellence framework, or whatever system is currently being operated. I'm required to produce not knowledge but research, and this is the yardstick against which my value, my contribution, the value of my contribution is measured. Now, I think that this is fundamentally a mistake, because I like to ask the question, whenever I'm about to embark on a research project, I want to contribute something that is genuinely original, creative, and worthwhile, and which is going to make a genuine contribution to knowledge. It's not just going to be a publication that goes on some kind of academic research audit, but that actually makes a contribution to knowledge. And so the question that I ask myself, and I think the question that I would ask you, Zoltan, perhaps you go through this internal monologue yourself when you're engaging in your own research. The question is, what counts as good research? Is good research determined by the level of the depth and the knowledge that you achieve, or the depth of insight that you gain, or is it determined by the prestige of the venue in which the in which the publication appears?
Yes, I think I agree. I don't have a problem with research as such, but I have a problem with how research is measured, evaluated,
yes.
In academia. And yes, I guess it is partly a problem of the whole society that we have academic career, and if we want to promote ourselves, if we want to get good jobs, then we have to publish in reputable, famous journals and all that, and this obviously distorts the whole project of research in different ways. And another issue is what we might want to call solutionism, or a sort of technological approach to research and the academic exercise. So issues like discovering time and again the depth of the human psyche, the darkness in the human nature, and the beauty in human nature. This kind of research is not valued to the same extent as discovering the solution for a big problem. And that is important. I really wish that our researchers would find a solution for the problem of cancer. I really wish that our researchers would find a solution for the problem of traveling to the moon every weekend. I would love to do that, and all that. So solutionism is not bad. I would like to see solutions, but my problem is that fixing things, controlling things, and finding solutions for things is only one side of life. Another side of life is seeing things, like seeing the depth of darkness in human psychology, or to use the Christian parlance, sin and the nature of sin. I might not be able to find a solution for that. So if you believe this, then sin will disappear from your life. And in this sense, I might not be able to find. But I might be able, or someone more gifted than me might be able to see you, to help you to see this darkness, for example. And this not solutionist approach, not technological approach to academia is much less to research is much less valued in academia nowadays. Just think about how they allocate money to different research projects. In general, humanities is devalued in academia, and more so. Yeah. Because it doesn't contribute to the same extent to the national GDP and all that.
Sure.
And I do understand why this is happening, but on the long run, this is a dangerous thing for the whole country, for the whole society. Yeah.
It is. No, I agree, and I think I share your concern there, Zoltan. I take your point as well about trying to reduce knowledge to finding solutions to problems or answers to questions, when sometimes the best knowledge that we can gain is the knowledge or the ability to ask different questions, and perhaps we're chasing the wrong solutions. And I share your concern as well about the extent to which research today is driven by commercial forces, and it's not necessarily driven by a dispassionate pursuit of the truth or an impartial discovery of knowledge.
So just to add one more sentence to what I just said as a kind of summary, I think what is much more valued in academic circles is knowledge, a certain kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
And what is much less valued in academic circles, and I think this is what you were talking about, is wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, applied knowledge as it's applied to life, which helps us to encounter reality with integrity. I think this is the heart of wisdom. It was actually Dallas Willard that taught me these important lessons. I've been rereading a book which I first encountered about 15 years ago. It's Dallas Willard's book, Personal Religion, Public Reality, ? Towards a Knowledge of Faith. And I remember reading this book. It came as quite a revelation to me at the time. And I think ever since I've become a full-time theologian in a theology faculty at Spurgeon College, the lessons have become even more relevant. Because Willard, I would say he taught me the crucial difference, which is often overlooked in academic theology, the crucial difference between genuine knowledge on the one hand and the academic ferment that's produced under the guise of research on the other. And Dallas Willard said there's a lot of research that is going on in contemporary theology faculties that has almost no connection with knowledge or with wisdom or with even with life itself. And I think that this is one of the symptoms of the postmodern shift. You said that you want to think optimistically about postmodernity, and I share your optimism to an extent, but I think that there are aspects of the postmodern condition which are deeply troubling, especially as they apply to the question about knowledge and what counts as truth and reliable knowledge. Because I think the postmodern condition has shifted the research objectives of theology today. It's like in this article which we asked some students to read as part of the preliminary reading. I've got the quotation here from Willard's text, where he says, and I quote, he says, "The process of the loss of the Bible as a source of knowledge historically culminates in a condition, truly the postmodern condition, where we do not have knowledge of knowledge. there is no acceptable truth about truth, and methodology is, with little exception, a matter of modish practice with no point of reference above the surrounding social flow. End of quotation. And I think that sadly there's a lot of truth in Willard's argument that what passes for research in the postmodern condition is often determined by, on the one hand, commercial forces, but also by fads and fashions and interpretations and theories. So what counts in research today is the soundness of your methodology rather than the conclusions that you reach. What counts today is interpretations and theories, not knowledge and truth. And I think this is something lamentable. Perhaps I'm just old-fashioned, but I do actually lament that this is the condition not only of the arts and humanities in general, but also I think it affects theology in a particular way.
Yes, well, I think no one hates the obsession with methodology more than I do. I genuinely hate it, and I hate the fact that whenever I write something, I have to write an awfully long section on my methodology and discussing the history of my methodology and how I would defend my methodology, instead of actually getting to the point and saying what I want to say.
I'm sure a lot of PhD students or research students who are listening to this can feel your pain.
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, we have to do it because of the general idiotism of the academic life, but I don't like it, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm afraid I lost what I just wanted to say.
That's okay. I was going to ask, Zoltan, I think it leads on from that point. Perhaps the thought will occur to you later on in the discussion, but just about reconnecting theology to the truth and to the pursuit of knowledge, because I think you and I would both agree that theology should be dedicated to the search for truth. And it's actually knowledge which is the key, which gives access to the truth. And
yes.
It's a quotation that continually recurs throughout Dallas Willard's book. In fact, I think there's a whole chapter with the title from the Old Testament, actually, from the Bible, from Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6, where he says that, where the prophet expresses God's lament, where he says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge."
Yes.
What's interesting there is it doesn't say that my people are destroyed for lack of faith or even for lack of love, but my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And I think this is such a profound point that, people perish because they don't have knowledge, because knowledge is something that gives us access to reality, and when we misperceive reality, it leads to catastrophic collisions with with reality. If you think about, for example, to take a very current example, the ignorant people who are acting on false beliefs, who have destroyed 5G masts outside hospitals because they thought that 5G electromagnetic waves were somehow causing coronavirus, and in some cases depriving loved ones of the opportunity to share some final words with their relatives, because they weren't allowed access to the hospitals, and they were denied the reception from the from the mass, and this was all based on a false understanding of knowledge and reality, indulging in conspiracy theories. You think about the obscene example of men infected with HIV/AIDS who believe that having sexual intercourse with a virgin is going to cure them. This is an obscene mistake, a misperception of reality that has destructive consequences. And so when we say that lack of knowledge leads to people's ruin, we're not just talking about people getting a wrong understanding of a biblical passage or taking a text out of context. We're talking about real consequences that lead to ruin and the destruction of people's lives.
Yes, although I have to add that the word knowledge is a key word in the book of Hosea.
Mm-hmm.
So it occurs several times in the book, not only in chapter 4, verse 6.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go through all the occurrences, and I actually did this a number of years ago, my conclusion was that even when the text doesn't say that, what is really meant is not knowledge in general, but knowledge of God,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
which the people were missing.
Yeah.
And this highlights the fact that there are different types of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So the examples which you were using are helpful, like 5G and all that. But they only helpful for a certain extent, because the knowledge of God is a special, unique beast, if you like, which is a different kind of knowledge than some other types of knowledge. And this is exactly what the academia doesn't always understand.
Mm-hmm.
They would like to catch all knowledge with the same kind of vocabulary and with the same kind of approach. Mm-hmm. So physics is very effective because it can send us to the moon and it can build 5G systems. So surely it can answer our questions about God. This is the logic. But this is not so. So in this respect, in fact, I do see an overlap between what I think and what postmodernism thinks, because postmodernism also teaches that physics is unable to describe the whole of everything. So when physicists write popular books, The Theory of Everything, and titles like this, these are highly misleading titles. Yes. Those are not the theory of everything. Those are the theory of everything about the physical universe at the maximum.
Yeah.
So in this respect, I share your concerns about the postmodern condition, but in this respect, postmodernism does have a point, and this is exactly the point which we theologians should make, that theology provides a tradition on its own, a vocabulary on its own, with the help of which we can formulate questions and answers which are not visible to physicists or mathematicians or any other fields.
Yeah, no, I do. Let's just put it this way, Zoltan. I don't not agree with you on that point. I think that theology does deal with a different realm of knowledge. It operates within a different semantic field, a different set of reference points to the what we might call the hard sciences, for example. But I do think that theology should recognize and respect the tremendous contributions that science has made to modern life, to modern civilization, to our society, and to the enhancement of life. And I think that all knowledge comes from God, and we can acknowledge the insights of science as part of the grace of God, revealing Himself through the operation of scientific laws or whatever. But I think I do agree with you that there are many issues in the world and in human life in general that most concern us, but which can't become the subject of scientific methodologies. So, for instance, even the question about God can't be reduced to a mathematical equation. That we can't assume that our understanding of God fits into our categories of whether it's objectivity or even subjectivity. God transcends in his very nature these categories that we might impose. But I would want to, I think, push back a little bit on what you said, because my concern is that when we posit a strict distinction between theological knowledge or knowledge of God and other kind of knowledge or secular knowledge, we end up with a bifurcation, a dualism, which is not helpful because it allows us to retreat into the refuge of subjectivity. That, well, this is my truth, this is my theological truth, and it might not have any application or relevance to objective truth. But I would want to make a case for the gospel, for example. The gospel not simply as a private matter that can be relegated to theological truth. I think the gospel is public truth, is truth for the whole world, and that we need to come to a knowledge of the gospel, because knowledge in the biblical tradition is associated with salvation. We come to a saving knowledge of God. Now, I'm not making an argument for Gnosticism here. I need to add that caveat, but Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and he is the incarnate Logos, the source of all knowledge, the one in whom all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden. So I think that as Christians, we should be concerned more with knowledge and with truth than with theory and interpretation, even though we need to be careful and use the right methodology and the theories and interpretations. But I want to make a case for theology or theologians to be bold in trying to advance knowledge, to make contributions, original contributions to knowledge, not just tinkering around with epistemology, but really to engage with those first order questions and to come to a knowledge of the truth. Especially important in a postmodern, post-truth age.
Yes, I fully agree with this. You are I think we agree on everything, but we are afraid of different things.
Yes.
You are afraid of this privatization of truth, of knowledge, that one can say that, well, okay, this is my truth, and it's okay if you disagree with me. And I agree with you. I see the danger, but this is not what I'm most afraid of. My fear is somewhere else. My fear is from a knowledge, my fear is not from a private knowledge, but my fear is from an irrelevant knowledge. A knowledge which you have in your mind, but which doesn't have an effect on your life. Because as I understand, the Christian understanding of knowledge, of wisdom, is that it is a deeply practical. So Christianity, as all the world religions, and even as secularism, is a disciple-making thing.
Yes. Yeah.
We want to make disciples. We want to change lives, and we want our knowledge to be expressed in life practices. And I see that danger which you are afraid of, and that is indeed a danger, and we can see it everywhere. But my personal fear is from this danger, that we become knowledgeable without a change of life, and that means that we are not really knowledgeable. So that's why I am emphasizing the personal nature of knowledge, and that the Christian truth is a person, and that we have to emphasize that relationship, and that's why I'm not that much afraid from postmodernity, because postmodernity itself, at least some understanding of postmodernity, can emphasize this personal nature of knowledge. But I do see what you are afraid of, and that is a genuine danger, and I do agree with you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Zoltan. And I think I think you're right the way that you express it, that we agree on the fundamental point, but the object of our fear might be slightly different. But no, I do share your concerns as well about the danger of irrelevant knowledge, that we just regard theology as an entirely cognitive exercise, which doesn't lead to a life of obedience and a life transformed in the image of Christ, which is the fundamental goal. But I think it was Kierkegaard who said that it's impossible to encounter the truth and not to be transformed by the truth. So I think that if we come to a genuine knowledge, recognizing that all knowledge comes from God, then I think the transformation is built in to that, built into that knowledge. And conversely, if we have a lack of knowledge, then this is also very relevant, but relevant in a very destructive way. That we misperceive reality, and as you know, we've given some examples about how that can lead to disastrous consequences that have a very real impact on people's lives. I can't help but think about this. It'd just be my final thought, I think, just to reflect on some of this in connection with the current global health emergency that we're living through today with COVID-19, and just how this situation has revealed the susceptibility, especially of, sadly, Christians or religious people in general, the susceptibility to conspiracy theories which have absolutely no basis in knowledge, based on fantasy and speculation. And it's just been another reminder that we need to be the people of the truth, taking a stand for the truth. There must be a role for theology to help people to come to terms with the truth. And this applies politically as well. I think regardless of our political affiliations, whatever they might be, but we can all see how this serious health emergency has exposed some of the lies and the hypocrisy of our celebrity populist politicians, who lack the moral fiber, they lack the empathy, they lack the integrity, and they also lack even the basic competence to deal with the serious issues that this pandemic has raised. And the lack of competence comes from the lack of knowledge, the deliberate falsification of facts in order to suit a particular political agenda. So truth is bent in such a way as to conform to a perceived reality. And one of the most disturbing things that I hear on whenever I listen to a politician on the radio, you'll often hear them preface everything that they say with the words, "the reality is." I just absolutely hate it. It's one of my pet hates whenever I hear, especially politicians being interviewed. They're asked a question, and then they say, the reality is, and then they proceed to just give their own personal opinion on the topic and then pass it off as reality. I think this is just another little sign of the postmodern condition in which we are immersed, and the post-truth age in which we live.
Yes. Again, just to create some kind of final words from my side, I fully agree with you. Though I do have a vague sense of difference between your approach and my approach. So where I definitely agree with you is that true knowledge and transformation are interlinked, almost the same thing. True knowledge and transformation cannot be divided. But perhaps my thinking is a bit confused, but when you said that true knowledge always leads to transformation, I was asking myself as I was listening to you that, yes, that is probably true, but isn't it that some kind of transformation also leads to true knowledge? So, for example, when we speak about these what's the word? What theories? Conspiracy theories. Yeah. People believe in these theories because they are afraid of certain things. So if somehow these people could get rid of their fears, or some of those fears, they would be more perceptible to the truth. So a sort of transformation would lead to the ability to perceive truth. So the direction between truth and transformation is goes both ways. Perhaps you are right, and perhaps the whole process begins with perceiving some kind of truth, and that starts the wheel moving. But it is a circle, and it goes both ways. So, and that's why I just want to emphasize the personal nature of this meeting with the objective truth, if you like. You have to be truth transforms you, and you have to be transformed to see the truth, and this is an ongoing growth.
Yeah, I think I can definitely see where you're coming from there, Zoltan. I think there's a lot of truth in what you say. That I suppose it's a chicken and egg question, isn't it? What comes first? Is it the knowledge or the transformation? Is it a little bit of both? But yeah, this is what we want to encourage at Spurgeon's College. We want to encourage students not just to gain a head knowledge of biblical facts or doctrines and ideas about God. We want them to come to a knowledge of the truth as revealed in Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And once people come to that knowledge, then we want to see the fruits of that knowledge being born in a life of faithful ministry and discipleship. Yeah, I think there is truth to what you say. I just think we need to keep coming back to the point about how our object, what do we produce as theologians? This first question that we addressed, and it's a good point to come full circle to address this question and to open it up for others to discuss among themselves. What is it that we as theologians produce? What currency do we trade in? And is this a currency of knowledge, or is it a currency of research? Is it a currency of truth, or is it a currency of speculation? And perhaps I'm just old-fashioned and quite traditional in this sense, but I do think that knowledge is an absolute Christian imperative, and that it's actually a gospel imperative to come to a knowledge of the truth, however we might define this. And that, we want to see change, we want to see transformation, but this change and transformation has to be built upon a solid foundation of knowledge that is true, knowledge that permits access to the truth of how things really are. So no doubt there are lots of other directions in which this discussion could lead us, but I think we better draw a line under it there. Zoltan, it's been really, really good, really helpful to interact and to dialogue in this way, and I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion with you and with colleagues and with the students. So thanks for your time, and thanks
Me too.
everyone else
Thank
for
you.
your attention. Okay.